My hand was still shaking when the shot left the cannon, and by the time I understood what I had done, it was already too late to take it back. My name is Vren Kesh, and I was a weapons officer on a ship called the Talon's Grasp. We were part of a retreating fleet, battered from a failed attack near a border zone, running low on fuel, carrying wounded soldiers stacked into every corridor. Our commander, a hard and desperate man named Doran Voss, was searching for anything that could save us. That search led us straight into the worst mistake of my life. We picked up a signal drifting in open space, a single ship, unarmed, glowing with soft green lights, broadcasting an old universal code that every civilized species recognized and respected. It was a human hospital ship called the Mercy's Reach. Massive, silent, and completely without weapons. Voss saw an opportunity. I saw a warning sign. But I was young, frightened, and trained to follow orders. So when he told me to fire one shot at the engines, just enough to disable it, just enough to force a surrender, I placed my hands on the controls and did what I was told. The pulse struck true. For 4 seconds, every light on that enormous ship went dark. Then everything changed. Red light flooded through the hull of the Mercy's Reach. Alarms that were not meant for us began echoing across every frequency we could hear. I did not know it then, but hidden beneath that peaceful green signal was a second code, one that human ships only used when their most sacred rule had been broken. It was not a call for help. It was a call for judgment. Space itself seemed to tear open behind us. Bright distortions bloomed across the dark, one after another, faster than I could count. Ships began appearing from nowhere, sleek and fast, moving with a kind of coordination that felt less like an army and more like a single living thing. Voss started shouting orders, trying to reposition our ships, trying to find an escape route. It did not matter. The human fleet moved through our formation like a blade through smoke. There was no hesitation in them, no wasted movement, no attempt to negotiate or demand surrender. They came only to finish what our shot had started. Within minutes, half our squadron was gone. I watched ship after ship vanish from my display, their crews silenced before they could even send a final message home. I remember gripping my console so hard my fingers ached, praying that somehow we would be spared, knowing deep down that we would not be. The Talon's Grasp took heavy damage almost immediately. Our engines failed. Our shields collapsed. Sparks rained down from the ceiling as emergency systems tried and failed to keep us alive. Voss ordered an evacuation, but by then, most of our escape pods had already been destroyed, along with the ships that carried them. I made it to one of the last working pods through pure chance. I do not remember much of the launch, only the flash of light as my ship broke apart behind me, and the sudden silence that followed once I was floating alone in the wreckage of everything I had known. I expected to die there. Instead, a human vessel found me. Not by accident, I would later learn, but because their fleet had orders to collect every survivor connected to the attack, no matter how small their role had been. I was pulled aboard the very ship I had fired upon. A woman named Clara Whitfield tended to my injuries. She had tired eyes and steady hands, and she worked on my wounds without speaking a single unkind word. Even though I had helped attack the ship she served on, her silence felt heavier than any accusation could have. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word cut through me like a blade. "You do not understand what you have done," she said. "Every species out here fights for territory, for resources, for pride. We accept that. But there is one line no one is supposed to cross. Hospital ships protect the wounded, the dying, the innocent. They are the one thing every side agreed to leave untouched, because without that agreement, there is no floor left beneath any of us. You crossed that line today. Now you get to see what happens next." I asked her what would happen. She did not answer right away. Instead, she looked toward the window, toward the wreckage still drifting outside, and said only one word: "Everything." What followed became known across many star systems as the fiercest conflict in living memory. Human fleets moved through neutral zones and border territories, with a purpose that no diplomat could delay and no strategist could outmaneuver. They did not seize planets. They did not demand tribute. They searched only for those responsible for the attack, following the chain of command all the way to its source, refusing to stop until justice, by their definition, had been carried out completely. I lived only because I chose to speak the truth the moment I was captured, before anyone even asked me a single question. I gave them Voss's name. I gave them the exact command he issued, word for word, without hesitation or excuse. It felt like the only thing I had left to offer that could mean anything at all. Voss was found within weeks, along with every officer who had approved our mission. I never learned the details of what happened to them, and honestly, I never wanted to know. What I did learn, slowly, over months of captivity, was why the humans had reacted with such overwhelming force. Hospital ships like the Mercy's Reach were more than places of healing. They carried memories of every soldier who had ever been saved aboard them, every family who had waited anxiously for news, every commander who owed his life to the medics who repaired him after battle. To attack one was not simply an act of aggression. It was an attack on the very idea that mercy still had value in a galaxy full of conflict. Clara explained it to me during one of our long conversations in the medical bay, where I spent most of my recovery. She told me that humans were capable of forgiving almost anything, disagreements, rivalries, even old wars. But the one thing they could never overlook was cruelty toward those who could not defend themselves. It was not about revenge, she said. It was about drawing a line that no one, ever again, would dare to cross. I did not fully understand her words until years later, long after the war had ended and the galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace, built on new treaties and stronger protections for hospital ships everywhere. By then, I was no longer a prisoner. I had become something closer to a witness, someone allowed to speak, to travel between worlds, to tell my story so that others would never repeat my mistake. I now spend my days on a quiet human station near the edge of what used to be contested space. Young officers from a dozen different species pass through here for training, and before they study a single battle strategy, they are required to hear my account first. I tell them exactly what happened. I do not soften it. I do not make excuses for myself. I tell them about the fear that clouded my judgment. I tell them about Voss's desperation, and how easily desperation can convince good people to do terrible things. I tell them about the 4 seconds of darkness after my shot struck, and the storm of light that followed. I tell them about Clara's steady hands and her quiet, unwavering honesty. And I tell them, most importantly, about the silence that comes after, the silence of a galaxy, realizing that some lines are permanent, no matter who draws them or why. Sometimes, when new recruits ask me if I regret pulling that trigger, I tell them the truth. Regret is too small a word for what I carry. It is not sadness alone, nor guilt alone, but a constant awareness that one decision, made in a moment of fear, can ripple outward and reshape the fate of entire worlds. I was the one who fired that single shot. I was the one who broke a rule older than my own species' history, and because of that, I am also the reason no officer under my training will ever consider making the same mistake. The humans taught the galaxy a lesson that day, not through cruelty, but through absolute certainty. They showed every species watching that kindness has boundaries worth protecting fiercely, and that mercy, once betrayed, demands a response measured not in anger, but in unwavering resolve. I carry that lesson with me every single day. I share it with anyone willing to listen, and though the war itself faded into history long ago, its warning remains as sharp and clear as it was on the day everything began. No one, in all the years since, has ever dared to fire on a human hospital ship again.